community leaders, the decision makers, and men have an important role in helping to stop violence against women. Violence against women is a men's issue because men can speak out, men can step in and say something when other men are being violent towards women, when our friends or our relatives are insulting or attacking women. Violence against women is a men's issue because a minority of men treat women with contempt, with violence, and it's up to the majority of men to create a society in which this is unacceptable. I think we can tell men that violence against women is men's problem. For example, if I am walking down the street at night, it's night and I'm walking down the street and there is a woman walking ahead of me, she may be thinking, is he going to attack me? Is he going to try to rape me? And so some men's violence makes me and other men seem a potential threat. It makes us seem dangerous, with good reason. Violence against women is men's problem because many men find ourselves dealing with the impact of other men's violence on the women we love, the women and girls we love. For example, when our wife or girlfriend was sexually abused as a child, or when her first experience of sex was being raped by her boyfriend. And we have to deal with the scars of that violence, the physical scars and the emotional scars. And violence is an issue of men, of course, because of men's own subjection to violence, which is largely by other men and reflects the power relations between men themselves. And of course, violence is men's problem because sometimes we use violence ourselves and we must reflect on our own violent behaviour and stop our own violence. Next slide, please. In terms of engaging men and speaking men well, another strategy is to highlight the benefits to men of helping to end violence against women. There are 4 ways in which men will benefit and 4 reasons why some men support this issue. First, there is personal well-being, that men pay a heavy price for conforming to dominant definitions of masculinity. Second, men have relational interests. Most boys and men live in relationships with girls and women, with sisters, with daughters, wives, mothers, aunts, friends, and so on. And the quality of each man's life depends to some degree on the quality of his relationships with those girls and women. Third, there are men's collective and community interests. Gender equality will benefit our communities in general. It will benefit our communities in terms of more flexible divisions of labour, in terms of lessening military and civil violence, which is often associated with aggressive masculinity and with patriarchal governments and patriarchal nation states. Finally, there is principle. Men may support the issue of non-violence, the issue of gender equality, because of our commitments, our ethical, political, or spiritual commitments, because we are Christians, because we are Muslims, because we are Buddhists, because we are pacifists or socialists or communists, because we believe in compassion or equality or social justice. These ethical and political commitments can also shape a rejection of violence against women. The last one on this slide is perhaps one of the hardest things we must do. We must try to minimise men's hostile and defensive reactions. We should try to approach males as partners in solving the problem, rather than as perpetrators of the problem. Other strategies we can use to minimise men's defensiveness, men's hostility, are to address men as bystanders to other men's violence, to try to create safe spaces where men can talk and learn, to use male facilitators, and to acknowledge men's own victimisation, men's own experience of violence, and some forms of disadvantage. Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to talk briefly about educating and changing men, and I've written in much more detail elsewhere about this issue, and I can send you that paper if you wish. So I'll talk briefly about what we know works. It's effective to use male educators and male facilitators. One reason, and this is a sad reason, is that men tend to be perceived as more credible, more persuasive by men than women. This is sad. It reflects the authority given to men and men's voices. Men can act as role models for other men. And having men do this work shows the recognition that men must take responsibility for ending violence against women. At the same time, women can also be very effective educators and facilitators in working with men. And it can be especially effective to have women and men working together, standing side by side. For example, it shows the participants a model of women and men working together in a respectful and egalitarian way. Other strategies are to use all male groups and workshops, create safe spaces for men to talk and learn, as I said. We should offer programs that are comprehensive. It doesn't work to change men's attitudes in half an hour, in a half-hour workshop. It's more effective to have longer-term, more intensive programs that are relevant to the audience and have positive messages, as I've said there. And we must not only address the cognitive domain, we must not only address beliefs, we must also address the affective domain, the domain of emotions or feelings, and we must address behaviour as well. So not only beliefs, but emotions and behaviour. Next slide, please. We must make our interventions culturally sensitive not only to culture and ethnicity, but to local gender cultures. For example, the fact that among different groups of men in different communities, in different parts of this country and other countries, there are local cultures of gender, of masculinity, and we must know about those in working with those men. We must draw on culturally relevant supports for gender equality. If I'm working with a group of Muslim men, then perhaps I can look in the Quran, in the Quran for supports for gender equality in that religious text. So draw on culturally appropriate and locally relevant supports for gender equality. We need to match our intervention to men's stage of change, to how willing men are to take responsibility for the issue, to men's level of awareness about the problem of violence against women. We should use innovative and engaging techniques to foster men's awareness of the issue of violence against women and the issue of gender inequality. For example, exercises where men think about what it means to live as a woman, where men listen directly to women talking about their experience, using local stories and local examples of violence against women to make this real, to make this relevant. We can draw analogies between gender inequality and other forms of inequality that men already know about. We can draw on religious texts, on local stories, myths and fables. But we can also use the universal language of human rights, justice and fairness. We must be prepared to respond to resistance, to men's hostility and resistance. We should focus on the practical action that men can take, make this practical, make this relevant. And of course, we should evaluate our work. We should always evaluate what it is we're doing. Next slide, please. And this work must be part of a broader effort, a broader